Okay, so I wanted to go through some. Look, this could be a little bit, it can evoke defensiveness. I urge you to remain open because I want to create some understanding and some parallels. This could answer some of your questions and your feelings about the topic I'm going to talk about. So, if you can remain open and not take it personally, you might be able to absorb some information and understand some things that create some discomfort, I would say, with a fairly decent demographic of the human species. Let me get into it. So, what I want to talk about, I've noticed, again, I follow a lot of people who talk about this topic anyway, because obviously I share the beliefs. But what I want to say is a lot of times when I do talk to people in my life, they want to understand why this group of people can be as obnoxious as what people see them to be. And I'll go through a few examples and whatever. So what I'm talking about, because I've been a bit cryptic, is because I'm trying to keep people with me a little bit so that, you can unpack some things. So, like I said, remain open and don't take it as an attack. Don't take it personal, okay? So, I'm talking about veganism. So I want to give you some examples, right? Now, once upon a time, it was seen as black people or people of color were treated like animals, right? Now, in those times, the majority of white people saw people of color as inferior. Was that true? No, it was never true. That's the reality. It was never true. It wasn't true then. It's not true now, and it never will be true. And I can say this comfortably now because most of the world feels this way about people of color. But at one time, they didn't. At one time, the things that were spoken about animals that are used for food was exactly the same descriptions that are used to describe people of color. That they were humanoids, that they were inferior, that there was, something lacking in them, they weren't intelligent, whatever silly excuses, right? What I want to draw in terms of a parallel to you is this: it doesn't matter. This is a victimizer situation. And it doesn't matter who the victim is and who the victimizer is. Wherever you put this, it's the same. It doesn't matter who the victim is. It will always be the same. It's always wrong, right? I'll give you another parallel. Once upon a time, it was, and some people, some men really still believe this, but it was believed that women were inferior to men. That women were illogical, that we don't have the capacity, we have to be, I don't know, taught things or helped in some way because, we're so pathetic. We can't, just the same as the people of color situation. That wasn't true then. It's not true now. And it never will be true, right? Intelligence doesn't really, it's definitely more of an individual thing. Like, let's face that fact. And if we want to talk about, I don't want to get too much into this. If it's something of interest, you guys can let me know and I can talk about it in another video. But I will mention it just because, it's come up. But in terms of the cognitive ability of the brain, they've proven through many studies that the prefrontal cortex, this is what's responsible for logical cognitive thought, females' brains are known to be a bit better in that regard. They're a little bit more controlled. And that's why a lot of times men will kind of do silly things and make silly decisions because their prefrontal cortex isn't as complex, I guess, or they don't have as much control over it as as females do. So again, this doesn't always mean that that's exactly how it is textbook wise. There's definitely anomalies, but and the other interesting part is the prefrontal cortex doesn't even solidify in the female brain until 25 and doesn't solidify until 30 in the male brain. So that's an example of that just proves that it was never true, right? That females are inferior, which is not. So I think it's one of these things, it's the understanding that in terms of the male female dynamic, we each have different skills, right? Different strengths, different challenges, but neither one is inferior. So that's number one, right? There was never, females are not, we're not inferior, so we don't need to be put into the victim category, and men are not needing to be in the victimizer category. The reality is we all have our things to offer. Now we can do the same thing with people of color. You can't really go about it in this way because there's literally no findings. Like, people of color simply have more melanin in their skin, so that gives them more color. It's also where they were born from a point of view of their ancestry. People who have darker skins normally come from really hot climates, and that darker skin helps them with the extreme heat. And people who are very, very pale are more in areas where it isn't as sunny because their skin can't take it. See what I mean? Like, those are the differences. Neither one is superior or inferior. It is simply based on where their genetic or ancestral makeup, what was needed. And if you go by a lot of people, scholars and people of the past, archaeologists, philosophers, whatever, it was discussed that human beings were brown once upon a time, all of us. So, I mean, if we're gonna say there's a species, in terms of our species, which one is superior? I mean, you can kind of think of people who've got darker skin. They handle the sun better, right? But does that mean that, that if you're of color, you're superior, or if you're white, you're, no, that's not how it works. But I guess if we're going to talk about a melanin point of view in terms of the environment, so that's interesting. But I want to draw that parallel to you because it's exactly the same. If you put animals into this category, it works the same way. Even if we can't speak to animals, even if we don't necessarily understand why they do what they do, it doesn't mean they're inferior. It's simply the understanding that we can't connect on the same level as they do. But it's not difficult to see. Even though you can't talk, there's facial expressions, there's body language, there's noises that they make, and you can feel it, you can see it. These are sentient beings just like we are. This is what veganism is, right? A lot of people think, like I hear it all the time. People say, I was vegan, and now I'm not. No, it doesn't work like that. Veganism isn't a diet. This is something people get really confused about, and that's why I thought I would talk about it. It's not a diet. It has nothing to do with food. In fact, with true vegans, we don't see animal products as food. Like, I know I don't see it as food. It's a being, that's been put into a package. If we were to put this in the lens of human beings, like, we would be completely horrified of the idea of cutting parts and putting it into a package, wrapping it in plastic, and right? Like, that would be deeply disturbing. Why is it different? Because we've been culturally and socially manipulated to buy a product, and so we don't see it for what it is. It's an interesting, you can kind of put this in the lens of like the Matrix, in a way, if you think about it. If you're not making this connection, you're in the Matrix. If you do, you're unplugged. You're not in the Matrix because you see the reality. That's why I said, make sure you don't take this as an attack. I'm trying to get you to think outside of, to make some logical connections and to understand, right? So the reason why, and I want to touch on this, the reason why sometimes vegans can, rub meat eaters or animal product eaters the wrong way is that when you make this ethical connection, there's a level of anger right? There's betrayal. You feel betrayed because you're now unplugged. I'm using the Matrix analogy again because I think it's worthwhile. But up to that point, you believed the lies. So when you're unplugged and you've made the ethical connection, there's anger involved with that because you feel betrayed. You feel like you've been lied to by society, by your parents. You know, it's kind of like finding out Santa Claus wasn't real, right? You now understand your parents lied to you. Easter Bunny, any of these sort of made up things, right? Now, some people might not be angry about that because it's not as big of a betrayal, but still fits in the category, doesn't it? This is what it's like. So a lot of new vegans are very angry because of that. So they're not handling things all that well. And they're trying, now that they've seen the connection, they're trying to get other people to see it. But it doesn't work like that. It has to be something that's gently approached, lovingly approached, so that you can make the connection. And a lot of times it needs support as well afterwards. Sometimes that can be the scariest part because now you're completely changing your idea of food, your idea of, you know, the victimizer type of situation. And so all of these things play a part in making these connections. But that's why a lot of vegans are angry. As you go along and you've been in this for a while, you become less angry because, and again, it depends on the person. But for me personally, I see it as more of, it's difficult to see something or to understand something that you haven't made any connections to and you don't have any support, you know? So that's why I like to do what I do, and that's why I talk about it the way I talk about it. But it's important to make this connection. And from a specifically ethical point of view, when you see that there's no way these things can be obtained than without torture, you start to realize that there's no way it can be done without animals being the victim. Therefore, if we pay for it, we partake in it, we're the victimizer. This can be harder to face because with people of color and seeing women as inferior, we didn't view it as food as well. You know, we didn't view those as food. So this is kind of like multi-level facing, and it can be very, very difficult. And at the end of the day, animal products have become a very, like, it's sort of seen as like a staple of a diet. So that's why people get confused. So plant-based diet is simply the diet where you choose not to eat animal products. You choose not to, you know, for your health or for whatever. So that's the diet part. Veganism itself has nothing to do with food. It is purely making the connection that you don't want to be part of that process. You don't want to be in the victimizer position, and you don't want to treat animals like victims, right? Like, you don't want to be part of the whole process. That's why this whole thing of when someone says, I used to be vegan, it's like, no, you once you make this connection, you are that way for life. So if you are going back, you didn't make the connection. Like, that's, you know, that's what people, someone tried a plant-based diet for a while, right? You can't. You can't just go back to being plugged into the matrix and pretend that you don't see the reality in front of you, right? I mean, I hope that's making some sense, but that's the truth in this equation. Now, in our society, it's not seen as illegal. There's no serious consequences in terms of a legal or a government kind of consequence. But it does have other ethical, I guess, strains, difficulties. And this is something I can probably unpack in another video. I think I probably will, because this can be pretty intense to face. There's no sense in looking at yourself as something evil or fighting it or, you know, being mean or any of these kinds of things, because we've all been raised in this environment. So it's about seeing through it, paying attention to the truth. I will go through the health side of it in another video, but I just wanted to show you these parallels. understand that veganism has nothing to do with a diet. In fact, vegans do not see animal products as food. They're not food. It's body parts of a dead creature. It's not meat, it's not pork or, chicken or whatever like these words are. It's dead body parts. So the more you can make those connections and see it for what it is, the easier it becomes. Also the things that come out of animals, so honey, eggs, dairy, like obviously baby milk, mammalian milk, like that's what it is. It's for the babies of that species. And then eggs, of course, that's the baby. I know if it hasn't been fertilized or whatever, but still, in that case, I guess it's passing an egg. It's an ovulation, like a period of the chicken. So these are not in any other area that you put it in. This would be weird. Like you wouldn't eat a human female's period blood, right? You wouldn't eat human being body parts. Like anytime you think about these parallels, there's no difference. It's just as strange. It's just as nauseating, like when you think about it. And people might come at me and sort of say, oh, we've been eating like this for years. Yeah, human beings are survivalists. We will do what we have to survive, but we don't thrive eating these things. We don't have any of the characteristics of an omnivore or a carnivore for that matter. So, I can cover that too. There's some really interesting research from Dr. Milton Mills. So I can go through some of that and make it a little bit easier to understand if that's something of interest. But I just wanted to talk about this because I hear it all the time when I talk to just general everyday people, when I look online. People don't really understand what this actually is. And again, it's complex. So yeah, anyway, I think I'll leave it there. I just wanted to draw those parallels. And I'll come back and do more videos soon. And I might touch on more of these things if you're open.